Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast, where each week we speak with brands, icons, innovators, and trailblazers within the fly fishing industry, exploring both the successes and failures they've encountered along the way to become who they are today. But first, if you have not yet subscribed to the podcast or joined our email list, please do so by going to the flyfishinginsiderpodcast.com, or you can also find us on Instagram at Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. Now let's begin. Welcome to the Fly Fishing Insider Podcast. Today our guest is Noel Fox from Hook and Vise. Hook and Vise is a Western Canadian fly fishing clothing brand who is quickly rising to the top. To tell us more about the brand is Noel Fox. Noel, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, we love it as well. We're nice West Coast boys, so we were just talking off air about where you live. It seems like we're not too far apart from each other, so that's kind of cool. Before we talk about Hook and Vise, because I'm very familiar with Hook and Vise, and I know a lot of people in this area are very familiar with it. But let's back it up and let's talk about who you are and how you got into fishing, where you live, and your life, who you are.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, I grew up on Vancouver Island. My mom, at some point, my dad passed away when I was 3, so my mom decided to become a hippie. So we lived in some pretty remote spots. Grew up most of the time without running water, without electricity, and spend a lot of time, shooting my guns and fishing. And my uncles, who were avid fishermen, they really got me into being in the outdoors and spending time in the bush and really developing a deep passion for fishing, all kinds of fishing. As a kid, it was when I was young, I remember bobber and worm, fishing in lakes for bass or whatever we could possibly get our hands on. When I was really young, our family started an annual family fishing derby, and it was a way for all of my uncles and aunts and cousins to get together. So that's been going on. This last year was our 50th anniversary of the Fife Family Fishing Derby. And each year a different family in BC hosts it. And, we've been to some of the nice lakes in the interior. Often it's on Vancouver Island because that's where a lot of my family still is. So that was always a real highlight of my year, I guess, as a kid. There's trophies for the biggest fish, trophies for kids, the kid that catches the biggest fish. There's a crib trophy. And it's not all about fishing. It's really about just the family getting together. There's certain times of the day where no one's allowed to fish, and we play sports and tell stories. And my uncles, Gordy Fife, David Fife, and Bruce Fife, from a very young age, were out in the bush providing for the family. They would hunt and fish and bring home the food that really did help my family get through, my mom and brothers and sisters, to make it through, because there were some tough times for a lot of families back then. So for me, coming home with a big fish was a real sign that I did a good job and I'm going to help feed the family. Those days are long gone. I still like going out in the salt and catching a few salmon and vacuum packing them so I can last for the winter. But nowadays it's a lot of catch and release, and every so often I'll bonk a fish, but not so often.
No, that's super cool to hear. You don't really hear that story too often. I mean, I do this a lot, and hearing about your family and how you're providing for your family through those harsh winters or harsh times, even like with a large fish, is truly remarkable, and especially at a young age. So that the family aspect and like looking at that family as a whole, like how was the transition from leaving the family to go to the city? Like walk us through that.
Well, it was a transition, right? Through junior high and high school, I remember, well, junior high, I remember often going out with my uncles in a canoe off of Campbell River and catching coho. And after school, I'd always somehow get a ride down to the beach in Comox and be casting for salmon off the shore. But at the same time, I really wanted to get an education. I'd end up studying graphic design at Emily Carr. So when I was out of college, I went to Vancouver, studied at Emily Carr with graphic design, and was still able to get out and get quite a bit of time in the bush and go back and spend a lot of time on the island. But the city life at the time was just kind of fun. I was young and just having a blast, I guess. So it was a real mix. But once I got a little bit older, the city, well, it has lots of things going for it. And Vancouver is great. There's so many fishable spots close to Vancouver, but it's just the crowds and the pressure that the systems get. And I'm used to going and fishing spots on the island where you don't see anybody for
Yeah,
days.
exactly.
Maybe you're hiking a river all day and catching tons of fish. You might pass one other guy, an old timer that's maybe meat fishing or something. But there's a lot of spots all throughout BC you can go and get away from the crowds.
Hmm.
So, and that's what my wife and I love to do now. We love to go hike to High Open Lakes with our packs and camp out for a few days and fish with dry flies. Or I'll go to the island when the even if the weather's horrible and raining, and my brother and I will fly fish for 5, 6, 7 days straight until the rivers blow, and just always searching for spots with nobody. So we show up at a little lake, and if there's a few people there, we'll just keep going, go a little deeper, hike a little further, and just try to find spots by
Hmm.
ourselves.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that as well. I believe I was telling you that as well, and it makes it so much more worth it for sure. So, Noel, you did mention your wife, and I know where are you guys currently living right now?
Yeah, so we moved to Whistler. I moved to Whistler about 8 years ago, and she had lived here for quite a few years before I moved here. So we got married, and I was trying to convince her to go back to Vancouver Island, and she thought, well, let's go back to Whistler for a while and we'll try that out. And it's it's a pretty great spot. It's if you want to get into the thick of it, there's fancy
Hmm.
restaurants and lots of crowds, but it's easy to stay on the peripheral. A lot of great mountain biking. All the lakes have tons of trout in it, and whether you go up to Pemberton or go down to Squamish, there's plenty of rivers with great fishing as well. So it's still a little busier than what I prefer, but it does have that
Come
nice
on,
mix. So close to the
it
city.
is Whistler after all. So, and you know what?
It's pretty good. Yeah, we're definitely
Yeah,
spoiled.
exactly. Come on, it is Whistler. I had to jump in there. No, here's where I want to go with this. So, your wife and your wife's also like a very important part of Hook and Vise, right?
Yeah, yeah. She's a co-founder. We started it
Yeah. Why don't we
together.
talk about Hook and Vise here? So, why don't you walk me through
Yeah,
for those that don't know and are listening right now, what is Hook and Vise exactly? And
yeah, sure. Well, I've always been a graphic designer, and then had an ad agency at one point, and then do a lot of branding for companies that become pretty successful over the years, and been really active in helping build some pretty big brands. So years ago, I had designed a ball cap and a bunch of graphics for a buddy, Jobby, who has a surf shop down in Malpais in Costa Rica. And I was wearing the cat. It was a really nice
Mhm.
hat with a nice patch and a skull. It was pretty cool, but it just started to get really old. So one day, my wife's like, Josie was like, "Okay, you can't wear this hat anymore. You're going to go buy a new one." So I went shopping around, and I went to all the typical stores, the fly shops, and the whatever other store that's around, and I just didn't really find anything that really seemed like it was something I wanted to wear on my head with a big logo for a company that I had no connection to. And I just didn't want to wear a big box brand. And so what I did is I designed up a couple of graphics and I produced two different patches. And Josie helped me pick out of a whole bunch of ideas I had. We picked two and we produced. You can't really just make one really good hat. So we ended up making two designs and we made 200 hats. And I thought, well, I'll go through a bunch of them, and then buddies and other people will get some, and who knows what'll happen. So it turned out that people really liked them, and in the first 2 weeks, they were all gone. Most of them sold. Definitely, my buddies and a few
Mhm.
other people got given a few, but they sold out right away. And I think, well, there we go. There's something that people are kind of interested in, and we got lucky as well. There was a bartender in Whistler that was wearing one of our hats, and a sales guy from a big company just happened to be skiing it during Christmas with his family. And he goes to the bartender. He says, "Man, I really like that hat. We'd love to sell it. Where can I find it?" And the bartender had no idea. He's like, "Well, I got it from this girl." So he texts this girl. The girl texts my buddy Elliot, who's now on our team. He's an avid
Okay.
fly fisherman. Him and I just got back from the Skeena a few days ago. And so he texts me and says, "Hey, somebody wants your email. They want to maybe sell your hat." So I'm like, "Okay, perfect." So I text him. He texts the girl. The girl texts the bartender, and I guess the sales guy was still there. And then on the Monday morning, this was the Saturday, the Monday morning, I get a phone call from some guy in Indianapolis saying, "Hey, we want to sell your hats." I'm like, well, right now they're, we order our patches from one place, our hats from another, and we get them all sewn at a buddy's place in East Vancouver, and we just have two designs. Like, well, that's not going to cut it because everything has to be a bit more pro. So he introduced me to the head salesman at FlexFit, and then things just kind of snowballed from there. So our first client was a pretty big client, and then luckily enough, we don't really do a lot of sales. We just kind of go into a lot of fly shops and
Mhm.
talk to a lot of people, but we're not saying, "Hey, buy our hats." And through social media and just from, I guess,
And I'm gonna get into no, I'm definitely gonna touch base on all that. So one of the things that you mentioned there, and I think it struck home with me, which is super kind of cool, and I've never really thought about it that way, was and I'm saying this for the listeners as well, is like you said, you went to the fly shops, you went to buy a hat, but all you could see was the big brands that you actually have no connection to. So let me ask you, what are people saying, or what's the connection that the industry and your fans are saying to your hat? Because I mean, again, through research, apparently your hat is considered a lucky hat. So where are we going with that? Like, walk
well,
me through all that.
yeah, I all growing up, other than just spending a lot of time fishing and doing some hunting and stuff like that, I also did a lot of skateboarding. I got into snowboarding really early. In '86, I started snowboarding, and so I was always into action sports. And a lot of the fly fishing industry is catching up a little bit. They are making some cooler stuff. But when I was first looking to get a cap, everything looked like the cap that your grandpa might buy.
Yeah,
It was pretty dull and just pretty standard. And I wanted something that was a little bit more youthful, a little bit more, not skate
generational,
influence,
right?
but yeah, just
It's
generation,
generational. Yeah,
something we can relate to. So
yeah.
that's kind of where that came from. And then the few people that did get them would take it fishing and like, "Oh my god, I just got so many fish! Like it must be the lucky hat." And enough people kind of came back to me and said, "No, this hat's lucky." That I'm like, "Well, there you go. It's a lucky hat. Who knew?" And
So you ran with the branding then.
yeah, well, we just figured if
On that.
we had enough people come back to us and tell us the stories of them catching the biggest fish they had caught before, or they've caught more fish, the first day they wore their hat.
Mhm.
Um, so, I think as well, I come from generations. My great grandfather was living in Victoria in the late 1800s. So my family's been in BC, living off the land for a long time. So maybe some of that generational luck or connection to the earth is kind of filtered into this as well.
Yeah.
Who knows?
No, it's crazy. I definitely like it. So, you know what? Also, with your company as a whole, and looking at everything, you guys have an extension mission list of your brand and what you guys try to do, and the focus of your brand and where you're going. And it is one of the coolest missions I've ever seen in doing my research on like companies, right? Like you guys, you're like, we will fish, we will have fun, we won't do the, it's just like so cool. Like,
Yeah, I could
yeah,
read it
let's
right
do
here.
it.
So our mission is to work less, fly fish more, live the adventure, explore, respect, pack it in, pack it out, tie your own flies, barbless hooks, keep fishing secret spots a secret, be a great storyteller, live the dream, and vice for life. And a lot of those things really mean a lot to me. Like,
Is that what the brand is coming across as, is relatable to those things? Like, are you finding that?
well, yeah, I think people that like the brand really respect it. Uh, we don't get a lot of haters. We get a lot of people on the river like, "Hey, you guys are the Hook and Vise crew." Um,
Yeah, exactly.
and I'm
Yeah.
sure there's people that don't like us as well because there's people that don't like everything. But for the most part, like we're passionate about. We never post where we're fishing.
Mhm.
We never, we really believe in keeping a secret. Pack it in, pack it out. I'm a huge fan of people that tie flies commercially, but I think you also need to be able to tie your own flies. That's why tie your own flies. Like at least know how to tie a fly, and then find a great fly tyer that you can partner with and get him to tie some flies for you. Yeah, I don't know. It was just all stuff that really meant a lot to me and to my wife and to a lot of our
Mhm.
friends that we spend a lot of time with. And even our team, our team is a bit of a makeshift team. It's a lot of guys that I fish with all the time. So we're always taking photos and having labs and camping. And then there's other guys that are actually, pro guides and guys like Brian Chan who's on the team. So it's a real mix.
Yeah. I was gonna jump into that later, but why don't since we're on the topic, yeah, let's just talk about it. So, basically, tell me about your pro staff. I know you have Brian Chan on there, super knowledgeable Stillwater guy, and I mean, if you don't know Brian Chan and you're listening, you should definitely look it up for that. So, who else is on your team?
Well, maybe I'll just tell the story with Brian. So a long time ago, through a friend, I went fishing with Brian one day, and I was just brainstorming the idea of Hook and Vise with him. So I've known him before Hook and Vise. He's kind of one of the first guys that heard the idea, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, I kind of get it. I don't super get it, but I kind of get it. I like it." And so then finally, when I got a few hats, I sent to one, "Hey, here's that idea you and I were brainstorming on," and his daughter exceptionally loves it,
Yeah,
and he likes the idea as well, and just a local BC company, and he's just such a great guy. And
absolutely.
then another guy that's good friends with Brian is Phil Rowley, so
Yes.
he's just joined our team as well, which is great. Um, and then the rest are just people that I've met through fishing. Some are guides, a lot are buddies. Uh, some people are big into social media. Uh, there's one girl, Rochelle Hellstrom, she's from the Kahari fly fishing team in
Hmm.
Campbell River. So we helped sponsor a high school team of fly fishers that recently went to the nationals and did really well. And then a few of them are now going to the worlds, and they're on the national
Cool.
team. So there's young, yeah, we're a huge fan of sponsoring, not sponsoring, we're a huge fan of educating and inspiring youth to get out and get their
Well,
get their fish on and get away from their technology.
and why do you guys feel that's so important as a brand?
Well, the brand Hook and Vise is really an extension of who we are,
Cool.
and I
Yeah.
just I feel that so many people are losing that connection to the outdoors, and it's amazing how, like, because I've got Hook and Vise and I've got another company called Freebird Agency, which is more of a creative agency. I'm a really busy guy, but I still manage to take a lot of time off and get out in the bush.
Mhm.
Like, I just came back from the Skeena, and now this evening we're heading down to Oregon to the Deschutes, and I'm able to get a lot more work done by spending a lot of time out in nature as well. And I think these days kids are just on their technology so much that it who knows, maybe it's the rock and roll of previous generations where everyone thought it was the devil. And I think that technology is not helping a ton. I think there's goods and bads,
Yeah.
and as long as you don't stay on it all the time. But I think kids need to get out and learn how to fall down, learn how to find their way out of the bush. It teaches a
You
lot of
still need to build a
lessons.
fort. I don't care. If you're a kid, you still need to learn how to build a fort, right? So
Exactly,
like,
exactly. I had
yeah.
my first hatchet when I was 3 years old. My job was to cut kindling
See what
at
I mean?
3.
Yeah.
Now I can't imagine how 17-year-old kids having their own axe. It was funny in grade 1 they had a soap carving, so all the kids were supposed to bring something to soap carve with. So I brought my big buck knife and a huge chunk of soapstone, and it quickly got confiscated. And I got given a bar of ivory soap and a plastic butter
Right.
knife.
There you are. Yeah.
Yeah, my mom had to come get me and my knife in grade
Oh, that's
1.
funny.
So but I think if you raise kids in a way that they're
Mhm.
responsible and they know how to use the tools and know how to live in the bush, then they come out of it with a lot more respect for that type of thing.
For sure. Absolutely. And it's so cool that that's like your mantra, that that's part of you guys, like an extension of part of you, which is obviously an extension part of the brand. So, I have a question. I know this is my question for you specifically for the brand, because again, I'm just trying to figure when we talk about Hook and Vise, now we're talking about like the brand itself, and it's open to, like, we're talking saltwater, steelheading, Alaska. We're talking like big water. It doesn't matter. Are we narrowing that into trout fishing, still water? Like, walk me through who the target is on this, on the brand.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I was recently down in California with Chuck Reagan,
Hmm.
fly fishing with Captain Vaughn in LA in the salt.
Yeah.
And we had a blast. And then, I spent a lot of time coho fishing in the salt just from the shore. I'm happy to get on a boat and fly fish. I'm happy to get in a boat and even just gear fish if that's the case. But really, it's so we're not being too specific. We're a lot of our caps say at least have a
Yeah.
little BC on it because we're from British Columbia, and we're really proud to
It's
be
a
from
great fishery.
BC.
Why not? Yeah,
It's just such a great, oh, it's a
yeah.
great fishery, great place to grow up. It's got so much to offer. Uh, I love traveling. I spend a month or so down in Costa Rica surfing and doing a ton of fly fishing down there, usually every winter. So we're not too picky, and it's funny the people that are buying our caps are, you know, we just shipped one off to Japan the other day, and there's a
Hmm.
bunch of people in Europe, and there's people in New York City. Well, the people in New York City, I'm guessing they're not fly fishing that
It'd
much.
be hard to.
So yeah, I think it's more just like by kind of the goal is if you put on a Hook and Vise hat, you're a little bit more inspired to be like, hey, let's make this happen. Let's take a few days off, or let's take a long weekend and get out in the bush and go chase some fish. And for me, it's, some guys are like, oh, I just want to catch fish. That's all there is to it. And for me, I was with my brother Jason Fox a week,
Hmm.
2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now, just before I went to the just before I went up to the Skeena. I might have said Skagit, I meant Skeena. Just before I went up to the Skeena, and we were in the bush for a week, and we snuck in and saw a herd of elk like all around me. I was
Nice. Yeah,
elk on both sides, these huge big things, and then this bull came up and looked me in the eyes. I'm like, man, I got my
yeah.
bear spray, but I just want to see it and watch it. And then shortly after, we saw a cougar, and we saw a crap load of bear, and we're going on these logging roads where not a ton of people go, and we're fishing in the salt, and then we're hiking rivers, and it's there's so much more
Catching.
to it
Yeah,
than just catching fish. We catch a lot of fish, which is great, and that's a huge part of it. But it's if it was just catching fish, it would be a lot less exciting for us.
absolutely, absolutely. Days that I've gone out too, still water fishing. Even just the other day, I was on the Vetter, and it was raining nonstop, but I just had to look around and say, wow, like this is pretty cool, and watch the water rise, and super cool just to be there. Did I catch fish? Yes, but you know what? Like I did take the time. I did appreciate where you're at, and that's what you have to do. So, and if you can do that when you're out fishing, it just adds to it as well. So, with everything, with
Definitely, definitely, especially the vetter. If the vetter's raining and miserable, there's a few less people out. It makes it that much more
yeah,
fun.
that's our secret, though. With all that said, I want to ask you, what are some of the ways that your brand or you're positioning your brand to scale your business? And I know we had talked about this before. What are some of the ways you're looking to scale this business? Because you got a huge following here in BC, and I'm so behind everything you guys are doing. I love everything you're doing. How do we get this? How are you guys getting this brand out there so that everyone else can be aware of what you got going on? Walk me through some of the steps that you're doing.
Well, so far it's been build it and they will come. So we made a few hats and people seem to like it. And we get, you know, I get emails from fly shops or lodges and saying, hey, like your hats, can we sell some?
Hmm.
And it's been really people have just been coming to us, and at some point we're going to outgrow that. I'm guessing like it'll still keep trickling in. Uh, I guess at some point we're probably going to do a trade show, maybe an industry trade show. We
Yeah.
produce we
Okay.
produce content. I'm really passionate about old timers and hearing their stories. So the first episode of Hook and Vise Legends that we did was with Art Limber, and he's a fly tying legend on Vancouver Island and just a gritty old guy. So if anybody's interested, you go to hookandvice.com and then go to our blog and you'll see a video with him, and he's awesome. And then the next one we did with Brian Chan, which just went live fairly recently, and then there's going to be another one that's been filmed but
Hmm.
hasn't been released yet. It's with my uncle Bruce Fife, and he's been a fly fisherman for 50 years, and basically
Okay.
with fly
Yeah.
fishing has taught me everything that I know. And just the stories these guys have are just incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it is. And the time, like and I'm not here to cut you off, but like the times of them, like the generational times, like seeing that the fish runs and the massive runs and returns and everything like that is just like to hear it is it's all I can do
Yeah,
is hear it.
I was lucky because as a kid, my uncles, they graduated from buzz bombing coho and canoes to becoming fishing guides, and Bruce and Dave Fife were both steelhead guides when they were younger. So I had the pleasure of, when I was still pretty young, like in junior high, beginning of high school, I was able to go to the Gold River and,
Yeah.
and fish with them and some some of the rivers around there that definitely don't get fish anymore. And I would often catch 20 fish in a
No.
day as a kid. Back then,
Wow.
I wasn't fly fishing for them. Um, but yeah, and
No,
my
but
one uncle
still.
Bruce, he was guiding and fly fishing for them as well. But as a kid, I wasn't as skilled. I guess I would still fly fish and tie my own flies because I couldn't always get flies that worked quite how I wanted them to. But it was pretty primitive back then.
Definitely, definitely cool. So, you know what, I like what you're doing, so I'm gonna make sure that I definitely put that in the show notes, with everything. But what was the inspiration besides getting the stories? And like, what do you guys hope to achieve by getting these stories on your blog out there? I mean, so someone watches it. What are you hoping to achieve?
Well, guys like Art Limber, he's a
Hmm.
pretty old fella and hasn't really had much of a story told. And he's in a lot of the fly tying books, and he's invented a lot of flies. And just guys like that, they've got these amazing stories, and they haven't had a voice because they grew up in a generation that wasn't. Everybody didn't have a video camera and a phone
Hmm.
sorry, a video camera and a camera and all these tools. So I think just getting some of these stories out, I really enjoy hanging out with these old timers and hearing their stories of adventure. My uncle Dave was telling me a guiding story in the Gold River where he's in his raft and with two clients from the States that have flown up, and he flipped his raft somehow. He was young, super young, and he finally got everyone together about 2 miles down the river in the winter, floating down the Gold. So stuff like that's just like you don't hear about that stuff much
No, no,
anymore.
no, definitely not. So if
It was more of a wild west back then.
and if you did, it'd be a different outcome for sure. So
It wouldn't be a funny story. It would be like horrifying.
yeah, it would be on CNN or something. So for sure, for
Yeah,
sure. So all right, so let me ask. You know what, Noel? Do you think the clothing business, like, what are some of the challenges? Do you think the industry is flooded? You guys have obviously been doing this for quite some time now, so you're not like an up and comer. But I mean, I get asked all the time, like, "Hey, I'm a new brand. Can you come? You know, can we do an interview?" You know, it seems like anyone and everyone's kind of starting like a fishing clothing business. But you guys, you know, you have a different mantra. So
yeah.
yeah, tell us
We
about that.
basically our business is we make really good caps, and then we have t-shirts and hoodies, but they're not. Some guys like they just want the super techie stuff. At this point, we're not that. At this point, we sell really amazing ball caps, and a lot of our caps
Yep.
are really high end. They've got stretch fabrics in partnership with FlexFit. They're all fully custom, so all the taping, the kite closures, all the bells and whistles that you think. I believe they're the our top of the line caps are the best fishing caps in the business. I'm confident of that. I haven't seen any other ones that can measure up. Uh, it's possible there are some out there, but with our stretch
Yeah.
fabrics, like our costs are high, and we do that for a reason because we're focused on the quality. I don't know what the evolution of Hook and Vise is. I've always wanted to have a fly fishing brand because I spend a
Yeah.
lot of time fly fishing, and it just seems like a fun way to kind of take it that one step further. Uh, Eventually, hopefully, we come up with some ideas and we're able to evolve the business beyond caps and t-shirts and hoodies. I don't know what I don't. We were always working on new ideas, and I haven't found one that I want to jump in full steam and launch. But there's a bunch of pretty cool ideas we're working on,
Can you share it?
and we'll
Can you
just have to
share
see.
any of those right now, or
Well, yeah, there's one is maybe this a concept where there's part fly shop, part coffee shop in little towns that don't need. The problem with the fly fishing industry is that a lot of the little shops are getting eaten up by the
that's right?
bigger
Yeah.
shops. And we're, growing up as a skateboarder as a kid, going down to the skate shop and talking to all the guys that were the super cool guys that were really good skaters was like the highlight of my day when I was little. And for me, it's like you go into a little, not even little. You go into a fly shop that's not a huge chain of fly shops. Maybe they've got a couple, maybe there's just one. And you get to talk with the people and you get to talk about stories. And it's just, and they have so much experience. And whenever I travel, I'll go to the local fly shop and they'll say, okay, this is the fly you want to use. And I might buy one or two of a whole bunch of different flies, but I won't buy them to actually use. I just buy them. So I go back to my campsite or my hotel room, wherever I am,
Hmm.
and I'll just tie up a whole bunch more afterwards. But it's just, there's something about it. So I'm a huge fan of supporting the local fly shop, and whenever possible, we get people to go to the shops, try the hats on, find one that's perfect for you. And people, of course, buy from our website a lot, but we're a huge fan of supporting the fly shops. So when there's places like Kamloops
Yeah.
that had a good fly shop, and then Wholesale Sports came to town and put the little fly shop out of business, and then Bass Pro bought Cabela's, and then they put everyone out of business. At some point, then you go into those big box shops, and I think they provide a valuable tool for a lot of people, but you're not getting that same
Hmm.
experience that you do
Hmm.
when you go into a little fly
Yeah.
shop run by cool
So,
people. So I think maybe there's an opportunity for a little, like, a fly shop concept that has more than just a fly shop, be it a coffee shop or something else. And then there's a few product things that we're working on as well. And for that, I've had some sample of, like, fly boxes that are kind of cool come back,
yeah,
but
that's a
the
tough
quality
game.
just hasn't been good enough quality. Yeah, I just want to make sure that whatever we're selling, I want to be able to
Yeah,
stand
yeah.
by the quality. And
Super important, absolutely. And let's when we talk about quality, I know you like you mentioned your hats are top quality and everything like that. So, if it would be silly to launch a product that's just inferior to that, right? It's bad for the brand as a whole. So, you know, um, what are some of the challenges, right? I mean, I'm sure we talked about quality, but like, what are some of the challenges that your business has faced getting up and going, like getting started? There must be some things.
yeah, there's definitely there's a lot to learn when you start a new business that I had no idea about. All the little CA numbers and barcodes, and bringing stuff in from other countries. There's a lot of uh, expenses and things that takes a bit of time to figure out. And funny enough, one of the hardest things is just, even in BC, there's fly shops that carry us, and the ones that do have amazing sell through, and they love carrying us because it brings a lot of people to the store, and usually they end up buying other stuff. But there's also a lot of fly shops that are only interested
Hmm.
in the big boys. They don't want to. They're not interested in carrying a
What?
smaller uh,
So why do you think
BC
that
brand.
is?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I'm guessing it's probably because there's extra work
Hmm.
involved, right? Because if you're working with Sims or Patagonia, and they're giving you hats and waders and a whole bunch of other stuff, uh, then it's just easy. And every time you add a new company to the chain, it means you have to cut one more check. And I, who knows? Maybe
Yeah,
we just
maybe.
haven't earned the
Yeah.
rights yet.
Maybe.
We've been around for 2.5 years now, and you know some of these guys are kind of old timers, and they kind of stuck in their roots. And other times people are like, our top of the line hats sell for forty
Hmm.
four ninety five Canadian, and that's kind of the going hat for a good hat these days. Whether you go to a fly shop or a skateboard shop or any of these shops, but there's still a lot of shops run by old timers. Like, well, hat should cost $21 or whatever it should cost, or Bass Pro, where they
12
sell
bucks.
their
Yeah.
Bass Pro hats for
I
$8 or whatever it is, $12. So yeah, we're limited because
yeah.
when you're a company from BC and you're producing small run, uh, I get messages once in a while, and it's like, you can't charge that much. I'm like, well, first of all, we're Canadian, so you're saving quite a bit right there. And they're like, okay, I didn't know that. And then I'm happy to tell the story about where all the extra costs go when you're doing limited run products like this, from being in Canada. Once you get huge and your costs go way down, it's a different story. But our goal is to keep bringing our costs down, but I'll never want to
And
sacrifice
and
quality.
that's why people like the brand, because you haven't sacrificed quality. You are, especially here in BC, like you have a strong loyal following. People line up to get the hats. The shops often sell out. They never order enough. So if you're a shop, order more. um because it's a challenge, right? And it's a great following, and that's super cool. And it's super cool that you guys are sticking to that, going, hey, we can lower the hat cost to $30 if we went with this brand or did that or switched it up, and you haven't. And that, I think, those that follow the brand have definitely recognized that. So
Yeah, it was funny. I was in a fly shop the other day, and I was talking prices with the guy, and the guy's like, "That's a lot of money." I don't know. It's like, well, I see that you carry
mhm.
Sage and you carry Yeti. And he's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
like,
okay, they're not that
yeah, like,
expensive then, right? Because there always room for quality products, and you don't want to spend money just to spend money. But I think the designs that we're producing are unique, and they're just they come from a place that's
And
unique as well.
yeah,
So I think it's we're able to tell a bit of a different
and
story.
that's what it is. The message is different. There's not just a slapping a logo on there that you bought on Fiverr for $5 and throwing it on a hat
Yeah.
and saying, "Hey, I'm a fly fishing brand," right? Which
Well, it's funny because I'll get an email from somebody and they're like a week ago and like, oh, I emailed you a week ago. I didn't hear back. I'm
yeah,
like, well, sorry, I am in the bush a lot of my time doing a lot of fly fishing, and my goal isn't to be one of those companies where I just have to
yeah.
be at the company, move my head office somewhere corporate, and not spend any time fishing or out in the bush because we just love it too much. We're always every second I can get, I'm sneaking off and bringing a fly rod and going and having an adventure.
Let me ask you: do you get a lot of people emailing you asking you for advice on how to start a business like yours?
Well, I get a lot of people emailing asking advice about, hey,
Yeah.
we're a lodge or we're a guide company and we want to produce some hats and we love yours and can you give us some tips? And you know I'm a pretty open book that way. I've got some email templates that
Yeah.
I've done for a couple people recently that I usually send it out. Not I don't get anybody saying, "Hey, I want to go toe to toe with Hook and
Hmm.
Vise. Can we give me your secrets?" And even it's not a secret, but there's a lot of people out there that they're just used to getting
Okay.
crappy products and they're looking to up their game. So I give them, "Hey, I get this here and I get that there, and these are different options." And if you want a really good quality hat, you've got to produce quite a few, like 500. But if you want to get a decent quality hat, you can do much smaller runs. It takes work and
Let
time.
me ask you: what advice would you give someone that is sitting there listening to this, possibly listening to this podcast, going, I want to start a hat business, or like, what would your advice be to that person?
I think regardless of what the business is, if you have an idea, the time is never going to be perfect to just jump in and do it. There's always going to be a
That's right.
million reasons why you shouldn't do it. And my recommendation is just do it. In the tech industry, it's called MVP, minimal viable product. And you want to just get something in market. And that's what I did with my wife. I had always been
Hmm.
thinking about starting something. And then I needed a new hat. I'm like, well, okay, well, let's just do it. We'll just produce 200 hats and see what happens. We didn't have a website. We didn't have even people to sell it to. Like nothing seemed to make any sense. I was just spending a bunch of money on a bunch of hats I did need. But if you just do it, take those first steps, and a lot of people have good ideas and very few people take that first step to get it going. So if you have a different way of tying flies or a special chicken that produces feathers or who knows what it is, whatever it is, I think just do it right away.
It's awesome. Yeah, great advice. Definitely. There's never It's like having a baby, right? There's just never the right time. So
Yeah, or even you starting a
yeah,
podcast, right?
off.
It's like you had to learn quite a bit. It's not like
You
you
know,
just
you know what
jump on the
You know
phone and
what
do it.
listeners don't actually know, and I complain on that, is while I was starting this podcast, I was studying for my nursing exam at the same time. So I was just like going insane. So just crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's yeah,
Yeah, and I think that's
you know,
that's that's a good lesson right there. Like
you
if
just
you
do it.
want it bad enough, you will make it happen on a
Yeah,
side gig. Like you can do it at nights. I
exactly.
watch
Yeah.
very little TV, and when I'm at home, I'm time flies, spending time with my wife or working on Hook and Vise. And then when I'm working on, I also have my other work that I do as well. And yeah, there's lots of time in the day if you just prioritize what's important to you.
Absolutely. Noel, I want to shift here to social media and the importance of it to your brand. You guys are pretty active on social media. Got a good little following going on as well. So, how important is it for your brand, especially since you guys sell a lot of, or you showcase a lot of product and you do it in a pretty cool way. And whoever the photographer is fantastic. I'll give them credit right now as well. So, yeah, how answer me that?
Great. Well, yeah. Luckily for me, I used to be a photographer. So, and eventually I got um, too busy taking photos for to do all the stuff I wanted to do. So I still do a little bit of photography for clients, but not a lot. So that helps for sure because I understand what it takes to get a good photo. Social media is super important for us. Our Instagram count is kind of our main focus. Uh, I used to go on Facebook a bunch as well, and I just got a bit bored with it. There was too much politics and too much stuff that just
Yeah,
didn't interest
everyone
me.
says that now.
So we yeah, we still do post
Yeah.
to Facebook here and there, and we'll have our Instagram feed post to it. And sometimes if somebody that posts something like a, you know, the Squamish River dams got dropped too fast and killed a
Yeah.
bunch of fish, for BC Hydro did it recently. So stuff
Facebook.
like that, I
Yeah.
like to post to Facebook because it can be kind
Hmm.
of, helps get the word out in a big way. Like things have to change. You can't just keep killing fish, especially in years when there's not enough fish. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. Even if there was enough fish, you shouldn't do it. So yeah, but social media has been huge for us. It's been a really great way to get our brand out, and Instagram is our main focus. And what's cool is, it used to be just me and my friends, or Josie and I and our friends, taking all the photos or going out and fishing and getting a ton of photos. And now there's enough people that have been buying our products through other, you know, um,
Hmm.
through other shops, or fly shops, or even other, some fly shops have websites. Uh, so people have been buying our stuff, and then they will tag us in their photos, and they're always pretty stoked to have us retag their photos as well. So now a lot of the photos are coming in from customers and our team. Yeah, full circle. And our team as well. Our team originally, when we got our team, we didn't have much content at all, and there were some people that were wearing our stuff, producing great content, and just seemed to share the same
Yeah.
values, and were attracted to the brand because of our values. So a few of those guys got on the team as well, just because they're just damn
So,
good people and always taking photos.
well, what's that moment like when you get, a picture sent to you and it's like, hey, I caught my personal best, blah, 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 a personal best coho wearing your hat. Here it is. And then, like, awesome, dude, love it. Like, walk me through, like, what's that feeling? It's got to feel good, right?
It's yeah, it's cool. Even I even get excited whenever I see a guy wearing Hook and
Hmm.
Vise. See, I was at the P&E, and not well, when it was just before it closed, and I saw a guy where I was like, "Hey, yo, man, Hook and Vise!" Like, it definitely gets me stoked to see it, because there's a few people that really know about it, but it's not a brand you see around all that often. But it's cool when people, oh yeah, I saw a guy wearing Hook and Vise, or I was talking to somebody that was wearing it, and then when I get people sending in photos, or pictures with a
Yeah.
massive steelhead, it happens enough now that it's still exciting, but it's those first few times that you get really excited. Like the first time Brian Chan wore his hat and posted it on social media, I'm like, oh man, Brian Chan's wearing a hat. That's cool. That's before he was on our
Hmm.
team or anything. I was like, oh, that's awesome. And then you get these other people that are people you look up to, or people that have mad skills, or they're able to help train, or they really share the same values, and then you see them wearing the brand because they also share the same values, and it's like, that's cool. It means we're speaking to the right people, and we're doing the right thing. And yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys are absolutely, speaking to the right people and doing the right thing. And I know we talked a bit about doing about a bit about your goals about the storefront with the coffee shop. But do you have any other goals going forward for, like, in, like, say 1 year to 5 years?
Our biggest goal is just to get into all the fly shops.
So how can that happen? How are we gonna how can that happen right now? If I had a magic wand, boom, how could we do that?
Yeah, I think if we had a magic wand, we would just get our hats in front of the shops, and we'd put them down on the counter, and we'd show the typically what happens. I go into a shop, and if they're interested or they like it, I'll pull out all the hats, put them on the counter, and usually what happens is one of their clients that's in the shop will come over and be like, that's a cool hat, and they'll grab one and put it on. So that's when they
Hmm.
really believe. As soon as their clients start like, hey, that's cool.
Yeah.
Um, so the goal is to get the brand in front of the people that make the decisions. And uh, at
Like,
some point it's going to have to happen if we're going to grow the brand and continue to go. Because at this point, even though we've been around for a couple of years, it is really a side project that doesn't it almost doesn't make enough money to even float the boat. So the goal is to get it to a point where it can kind of just run itself, and we can get it in all the shops, and then from there, partner with a few people that have some good ideas, and just expand the
and
line.
that's where I was going to go next, actually. You said partner some people that have some good ideas. Would you guys be open to doing collabs with other artists or other causes, say, like, Bristol Bay or something like that? Like, walk me through what your thought is on that.
Yeah, we already do a collab right now with Watershed
Hmm.
Watch, and they're a group out of BC that's very active in removing salmon farms from
Which is good.
BC.
Yeah.
So we have a t-shirt graphic, and we've done a few t-shirt graphics over the years where 100% of the profits go
Cool.
to
Yeah.
them. And our goal is to create awareness and to help them out. So it's not a traditional collab where we're like partnering with a really cool brand and the cool two brands together uh, are
Hmm.
making it even that much better, which I would love to do as well. Like if I could do some collabs with a cool rod company or some other brands like that, I think
Okay.
that'd be really neat.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten there yet, and it's the list of things I need to or should to do are
Yeah.
are very long. But that collabs would
Yeah.
be an amazing way to go, and we love supporting. We
No.
can't support everybody, but we do love supporting certain groups. So this Watershed Watch is doing an amazing job. The Kahari High School I mentioned in Campbell River, their team is just like a bunch of really passionate
Yeah.
young fly fishers, which is awesome, youth. And so, but yeah, collabs would be a great way to go. So finding a brand that, I've had a couple talks with a few brands, but I haven't actually fully realized it yet. But I think there's probably some brands that are dying to be perceived as a little bit more modern or updated, or just kind of like a collab in some way would be
Hmm.
awesome.
Okay. Cool. No, I like it. So that would be involved with your anything else in like bigger picture thinking.
Well, yeah, just as far as the brand, it's more just like
Just get.
we just want to fly fish and have a good time. So yeah, like I said, I just
That's what I
was
love.
in the up at the Skeena last week, and before that for
Where were you? Like just on the Skeena
with at
itself?
Skeena
Like
Spay with we stayed
oh,
with Brian
with
Niska and his
Niska.
team.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know Brian well.
cool. Yeah, he was a Whistler boy in Squamish,
Yeah.
and
Was
him and his team
was
are amazing.
was Pureway up there too?
No, he wasn't. His rods were.
Of course they are.
Yeah, and Elliot, who was up there, he's good friends
Yeah.
with Paraway. Uh, but yeah, it was the fishing was slow. We had to work really hard to get our fish in,
Oh
but
yeah.
we still caught a bunch of fish.
Nice.
Uh, yeah, it was fun. So yeah, John MacArthur, who's a guide based out of the city, and Elliot Brass, who's
Yeah.
on our team, and myself went up.
Awesome.
So yeah, and yeah, but our goal is just to do more of that. Like going down to Oregon today, and then come back, and then gonna go over to Hawaii, get some sun, and do some fishing over in Hawaii, and then come back, fish here for chum season, and then go somewhere else. Just kind of just keep living the dream. And on the side, my one of my good things I have to do now is I do all the design,
Yeah.
the graphic design for all the hats, and so I need to design next spring's lineup, and I've got to get it on that right away. So that's a pretty big
That
process.
is, yeah.
Um, and so yeah, there's a lot to do.
Cool, man. Sounds like you guys are keeping super busy. You know what? Before I let you go, I'm gonna ask you the one question that I always ask everyone is what is one thing you would change within the fly fishing industry?
One thing I would change within the fly fishing industry. Well, I think we're pretty lucky to be in the fly fishing industry in the first place. Like for the most part, you're walking down the river, you bump into a fly fisherman, and everyone's pretty friendly. And uh, I think the one thing that's a little bit funny from time to time, and it hardly ever happens, but you'll get guys like they don't want to show you their fly or they're being a bit secretive, and I think that's a bit odd. But I think at the same time, uh, there's not too many things I'd change. I think it's an awesome industry filled with good people, and for the most part, I think the industry is learning really quickly thanks to social media. The idea of
Hmm.
keeping them wet and treat your fish with care. If you go to any of the big commercial like meat fisheries, like the cap when it opens, or sometimes it gets a little bit disheartening seeing a bunch of people that aren't really into it, where they're treating fish poorly. So I think the biggest thing fishing in general is just we got to start treating our fish
Hmm.
better. And a couple years ago, pinks were there were so many pinks people didn't think about treating them
Hardly
well, and
any.
now
Yeah.
this year there's a fraction of what there is. It's like we
Yeah.
have to treat all of our fish really carefully. And I'd also like to people to speak up a little bit more when they see things they don't believe in. Like for us, we're passionate
Yeah.
about removing fish farms from open net fish farms. I'm okay if they do landlocked or closed fish farms. I'm fine with that,
Yeah.
but we don't need open pen fish farms, and we need better logging practices, and we need a bunch of things that are going to help our fish live. Because once they go in the ocean's already a mess as it is. So we have to do everything we can. So I think that's one thing I'd like to change is just have people be a little more responsible, a little more outspoken when it comes to, hey, this is how things need to be if we want to continue to have great fishing like we're blessed here, and a lot of countries have lost that opportunity.
Absolutely. You know what, Noel? So cool. Definitely so cool. I'm glad you guys are on board and you have that voice and you voiced your opinion as well on the show about that. And that's what you guys believe in. So for sure. Before I let you go, where can listeners find your product? Where can they find you? Where can we learn a bit more about Hook and Vise?
Yeah, so if you're in Vancouver, Hatchmatcher has a good selection. Pacific Angler has an amazing selection. Um, Michael and Young have a good selection, and then from there,
Hmm.
Fernie Fly Shop, or down in Oregon, there's a few shops that carry us. But if you're not in the city or close to a fly shop, a lot of people go to our website and purchase online. We ship internationally, and really, like, if you live close to a fly shop and you want to get Hook and Vise, before you even go to our website, go down to your fly shop and say, "Hey, there's this brand that's awesome, and I think you should carry us." And we would rather have a fly shop sell our caps and have people go in and supporting the local fly shop versus just buying our stuff online. But at the same time, by all means, buy us online as well. Like, we're happy to ship, because a lot of people, we get a lot of orders from really remote spots up north in Alberta, places where there's just not shops around. So, and that's where e-commerce comes in really handy, and selling on our site comes
So
in handy.
what's your site?
Our site is hookandvice.com. It's spelled HOOKANDVICE, not VISE. So we've spelled vice more like it's a vice versus something you actually use to tie the fly. So it's a bit of a play on words, kind of like fishing is my vice.
Gotcha. I like it actually. And
Yeah, and our blog's a great spot too. There's a lot of really great stories, some great videos. Some of the Hook and Vice Legends videos are on our blog. So if you're just interested in going and seeing some more about what our team is up to, there's quite a few blog posts on there.
cool. And what's your social media channels if someone wanted to follow the cool photography?
Yeah, it's Instagram is just /Hook and Vice, VICE. Facebook's the same, and basically you just Google Hook and Vice, and we will show up, certainly.
Perfect. I'll make sure I put all that in the show notes. You know
Fantastic.
what? No, I definitely want to thank you for being a guest on our show today. I just love what the brand's doing. Love what you guys stand for. Everything that you're behind, I'm so on board for as well. So I definitely love in that. So, and I want to thank you guys, the listeners, as well. Thanks a lot for listening to the Fly Fishing Insider podcast. All right, guys. Thanks.